welcome. Let me put the do not disturb on. How's everybody doing? Merry Christmas. Oh, look like I got a beauty mark there. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm going to be doing a live reading, two live readings, in fact, two live readings. I'm going to read an excerpt from a book, and a very famous Christmas poem. Okay. Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas Eve. So here we go. Move you guys over just a little bit so you can see the tree. Everybody ready? Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and thank you to all of the people online and offline who have collectively made the last 2 years bearable. Well, Caper, I'm very happy to have done so if I have done any part in that whatsoever. Okay, so here we go. I got to take these glasses off. Those are my computer glasses. I got to put my bifocals on because the glasses on the bottom are reading. Now, the first thing I'm going to read, everybody comfy? Oh, I didn't get my cup of tea. I'll be right back. Get your hot chocolate, your cup of tea, get the kids settled, because this is for them as much as anybody. Oh, I'll be right back. I forgot my cup of tea. And I can't read without my cup of tea to wet the whistle. Huh? It should be. Well, you might have to break one open and see. And bring me a cup of tea, dear. Tea bags in the cup. I'm late. I'm supposed to be reading. Kettle's on. Check the sausage rolls. If they're not ready, put them back in at 375 for another 15 minutes. Homemade sausage rolls for Christmas Eve supper. Dee Dee Jones, Merry Christmas. Well, I've been having a really rough winter so far, a rough fall and winter. We're supposed to be in my studio doing this today, and I've blown my knee, and I can't do that. So please excuse me. But let's do a live reading. Our first live reading is from the book Little Women. You guessed it. We know what scene I'm going to read, don't we? Everybody ready? Okay. And I see seashell. Just kidding. All right. Chapter 1 of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Illustrated, whatever. You don't need to know that. Chapter 1. Hi. I won't be able to talk now, guys. I'm just reading, okay? Chapter 1. Playing Pilgrims. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. It's so dreadful to be poor, sighed Meg, looking down at her old dress. I don't think it's fair for some girls to have plenty of pretty things and other girls nothing at all, added little Amy with an injured sniff. We've got father and mother and each other, said Beth contentedly from her corner. The 4 young faces on which the firelight shone brightened at the cheerful words, but darkened again as Joe said sadly, We haven't got father, and shall not have him for a long time. She didn't say perhaps never, but each silently added it, thinking of father far away where the fighting was. Nobody spoke for a minute. Then Meg said in an altered tone, You know, the reason Mother proposed not having any presents this Christmas was because it's going to be hard winter for everyone, and she thinks we ought not to spend money for pleasure when our men are suffering so in the army. We can't do much, but we can make our little sacrifices, and we ought to do it gladly. But I'm afraid I don't, and Meg shook her head as she thought regretfully of all the pretty things she wanted. But I don't think the little we should spend would do any good. We've each got $1, and the army wouldn't be much help by our giving that. I agree not to expect anything from Mother or you, but I don't want to buy Undine and Symmetram for myself. I've wanted it for so long, said Joe, who was a bookworm. I planned on spending mine in music, said Beth with a little sigh, which no one heard but the hearth brush and the kettle holder. I shall get a nice box of Faber's drawing pencils. I really need them, said Amy decidedly. Mother didn't say anything about our money. She won't wish us to give everything up. Let's each buy what we want and have a little fun. I'm sure we work hard enough to earn it. Thank you so very much, Caper. Cried Joe, examining the heels of her shoes in a gentlemanly manner. I know I do. Teaching those tiresome children nearly every day when I'm longing to enjoy myself at home, began Meg, in the complaining tone again. You don't have half such a hard time as I do, said Joe. How would you like to be shut up for hours with a nervous, fussy old lady who keeps you trotting, is never satisfied, and worries you till you're ready to fly out of the window or cry? It's naughty to fret, but I do think washing dishes and keeping things tidy is the worst work in the world. It makes me cross and my hands get so stiff. I can't practice well at all. And Beth looked at her rough hands with a sigh that anyone could hear that time. I don't believe any of you suffer as I do, cried Amy, for you don't have to go to school with impertinent girls who plague you if you don't know your lessons and laugh at your dresses and label your father if he isn't rich and insult you when your nose isn't nice. If you mean libel, I'd say so, and not talk about labels as if Papa was a pickle bottle, advised Joe, laughing. I know what I mean, and you needn't be satirical about it. It's proper to use good words and improve your vocabulary, returned Amy with dignity. Don't peck at one another, children. Don't you wish we had the money Papa lost when we were little, Joe? Dear me, how happy and good we'd be if we had no worries, said Meg. Who could remember better times? You said the other day you thought we were a deal happier than the king's children, for they were fighting and fretting all the time in spite of their money. So I did, Beth. Well, I think we are. For though we don't have to work, we make fun of ourselves and we're a pretty jolly set, as Joe would say. Joe does use such slang words, observed Amy with a reproving look at the long figure stretched out on the rug. Joe immediately sat up, put her hand in her pocket, and began to whistle. Don't, Joe, it's so boyish. That's why I do it. I detest rude, unladylike girls. I hate affected, niminy-piminy chits. Birds in their little nests agree, sang Beth, the peacemaker, with such a funny face that both sharp voices softened to a laugh, and the pecking ended for the time. Really, girls, you're both to be blamed, said Meg, beginning to lecture in her elderly sister fashion. You are old enough to leave off boyish tricks and to behave better, Josephine. It didn't matter so much when you were a little girl, but now you are so tall and turn up your hair. You should remember that you're a young lady. I'm not. And if turning up my hair makes me one, I'll wear it in 2 tails till I'm 20, cried Joe, pulling off her net and shaking down her chestnut mane. I hate to think I've got to grow up and be Miss March and wear long gowns and look as prim as a China aster. It's bad enough to be a girl anyway, when I like boys' games and work and manners. I can't get over my disappointment in not being a boy, and it's worse ever now, for I'm dying to go to fight with Papa, and I can only stay at home and knit like a poky old woman. Joe shook the blue army sock with the needle till the needles rattled like castanets, and her ball bounded across the room. Poor Joe. It's too bad, but it can't be helped. So you must try to be contented with making your name boyish and playing brother to us all. us girls, excuse me, said Beth, stroking the rough head at her knee with a hand that all the dishwashing and dusting in the world could not make ungentle in its touch. And as for you, Amy, continued Meg, you are altogether too particular and prim. Your airs are funny now, but you'll grow up an affected little goose if you don't take care. I like your nice manners and refined ways of speaking when you don't try to be elegant. But your absurd words are as bad as Joe's slang. If Joe is a tomboy and Amy is a goose, what am I, please? Asked Beth, ready to share the lecture. You are a dear and nothing else, answered Meg warmly, and no one contradicted her, for the mouse was the pet of the family. As young readers like to know how people look, we'll take this moment to give them a little sketch of the four sisters, who sat knitting away in the twilight, while the December snow fell quietly without, and the fire crackled cheerfully within. It was a comfortable old room, though the carpet was faded and the furniture very plain. For a good picture or two hung on the walls, books filled the recesses, chrysanthemums and Christmas roses bloomed in the windowsills, and a pleasant atmosphere of home peace pervaded it. Margaret, the eldest of the four, was 16 and very pretty, being plump and fair with large eyes and plenty of soft brown hair, a sweet mouth and white hands, of which she was rather vain. 15-year-old Joe was very tall, thin and brown, and reminded one of a colt, for she never seemed to know what to do with her long limbs, which were very much in her way. Oh, thank you, darling.
Do they look done?
Well, yes. Looks very much done. Here. I can't eat, I'm reading.
Okay.
Thank you, darling.
They're done now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Sorry, folks. That's dinner waiting. Wow, that's hot tea. Okay. For she never seemed to know what to do with her long limbs, which were very much in her way. She had a decided mouth, a comical nose, and sharp gray eyes, which appeared to see everything and were by turns fierce, funny, or thoughtful. Her long, thick hair was her one beauty, but it was usually bundled into a net to be out of her way. Round shoulders had Joe, big hands and feet, a flyaway look to her clothes, and the uncomfortable appearance of a girl who was rapidly shooting into a woman and didn't like it. Elizabeth, or Beth, as everyone called her, was a rosy, smoothie-haired, bright-eyed girl of 13, with a shy manner, a timid voice, and a peaceful expression, which was seldom disturbed. Her father called her Little Tranquility, and the name suited her excellently, for she seemed to live in a happy world of her own, only venturing out to meet the few whom she trusted and loved. Amy, though the youngest, was a most important person, in her own opinion at least. A regular snow maiden with blue eyes and yellow hair curling on her shoulders. Pale and slender, and always carrying herself like a young lady mindful of her manners. What the characters of the four sisters were, we will have to leave to be found out. The clock struck 6, and having swept the hearth, Beth put a pair of slippers down to warm. Somehow the sight of the old shoes had a good effect upon the girls, for Mother was coming, and everyone brightened to welcome her. Meg stopped lecturing and lighted the lamp. Amy got off the easy chair without being asked, and Joe forgot how tired she was as she sat up to hold the slippers nearer to the blaze. They are quite worn out. Marmee must have a new pair. I thought I'd get her some with my $1, said Beth. No, I shall, cried Amy. I'm the oldest, began Meg, but Joe cut in with a decided, I'm the man of the family now Papa is away, and I shall provide the slippers, for he told me to take special care of Mother while he was gone. I tell you what we'll do, said Beth. Let's each get her something for Christmas and not get anything for ourselves. That's like you, dear. What will we get her? Joe exclaimed. Everyone thought soberly for a minute, and then Meg announced, as if the idea was suggested by sight of her own pretty hands. I shall give her a nice pair of gloves. Army shoes, cried Joe, the best to be had. Some handkerchiefs, all hemmed, said Beth. I'll get a little bottle of cologne. She likes it, and it won't cost much, so I'll have some left to buy my pencils, said Amy. How will we give her the thing? How will we give the things? Asked Meg. Put them on the table and bring her in and see her open the bundles. Don't you remember how we used to do on our birthdays? Answered Joe. I used to be so frightened when it was my turn to sit in the big chair with the crown on and see you all coming marching round to give me presents with a kiss. I liked the things and the kisses, but it was dreadful to have you sitting and looking at me while I opened the bundles, said Beth, who was toasting her face and bread for tea at the same time. Let Marmee think we are getting things for ourselves, and then surprise her. We must go shopping tomorrow afternoon. Meg, there is so much to do about the play for Christmas night, said Joe, marching up and down, with her hands behind her back and her nose in the air. I don't mean to act any more after this time. I'm getting too old for such things, observed Meg, who was as much a child as ever about dressing up frolics. You won't stop, I know, as long as you can trail around in a white gown with your hair down and wear gold paper jewelry. You're the best actress we've got, and there'll be an end of everything if you quit the boards, said Joe. We ought to rehearse tonight. Come here, Amy, and do the fainting scene. You're as stiff as a poker in that. I can't help it. I never saw anyone faint, and I don't choose to make myself all black and blue, tumbling flat as you do. If I can go down easily, I'll drop. If I can't, I shall fall into a chair and be graceful. I don't care if Hugo does come at me with a pistol, returned Amy, who was not gifted with dramatic power, but she was chosen because she was small enough to be borne out shrieking by the villain of the piece. Do it this way. Clasp your hands and stagger across the room, crying frantically, Rodrigo! Rodrigo! Save me! Save me! And away went Joe, with a melodramatic scream which was truly thrilling. Amy followed, but she poked her hands out stiffly before her and jerked herself along as if she went by machinery, and her ow was more aggressive of pins being run into her hand than of fear and anguish. Joe gave a despairing groan, and Meg laughed outright, while Beth let her bread burn as she watched the fun with interest. Sorry, my voice is a little rough from singing. It's no use. Do the best you can when the time comes, and if the audience laughs, don't blame me. Come on, Meg. Then things went smoothly, for Don Pedro defied the world in a speech or two of pages without a single break. Hagar the witch chanted an awful incantation over her kettleful of simmering toads with weird effect. Rodrigo rent his chains asunder and manfully, and Hugo died in the agonies of remorse and arsenic with a wild ha-ha, ha-ha. It's the best we've ever had yet, said Meg, as the dead villain sat up and rubbed his elbows. I don't see how you can write and act such splendid things, Joe. You're a regular Shakespeare, exclaimed Beth, who firmly believed that her sisters were gifted with wonderful genius in all things. Not quite, replied Joe modestly. I don't think The Witch's Curse an operatic tragedy. It's rather a nice thing, but I'd like to try Macbeth if we only had a trap door for Banquo. I always wanted to do the killing part. Is that a dagger that Is that a dagger that I see before me? Muttered Jo, rolling her eyes and clutching at the air as she had seen a famous tragedian do. No, it's the toasting fork, with Mother's shoe on it instead of the bread. Beth's stage struck, cried Meg, and the rehearsal ended in general burst of laughter. Glad to see you so merry, my girls, said a cheery voice at the door, and the actors in the audience turned to welcome a tall, motherly lady with a "Can I help you?" look about her, which was truly delightful. She was not elegantly dressed, but a noble-looking woman, and the girls thought the gray cloak and unfashionable bonnet covered the most splendid mother in the world. Well, dearies, how have you got on today? There was so much to do getting the boxes ready to go tomorrow that I didn't come home to dinner. Has anyone called? Beth, how is your cold, Meg? Jo, you look tired to death. Come and kiss me, baby. While making these maternal inquiries, Mrs. March got her wet things off, her warm slippers on, and sitting down in the easy chair, drew Amy to her lap, preparing to enjoy the happiest hour of her busy day. The girls flew about, trying to make things comfortable, each in her own way. Meg arranged the tea table. Jo brought wood and set chairs, dropping, overturning, and clattering everything she touched. Beth trotted to and fro between the parlor and kitchen, quiet and busy, while Amy gave directions to everyone as she sat with her hands folded. As they gathered about the table, Mrs. March said with a particularly happy face, I've got a treat for you after supper. A quick, bright smile went around like a streak of sunshine. Beth clapped her hands, regardless of the biscuit they held, and Jo tossed up her napkin, crying, A letter! A letter! 3 cheers for Father! Yes, a very nice long letter. He is well and thinks he shall be through the cold season better than we feared. He sends all sorts of loving wishes for Christmas and a special message for you girls, said Mrs. March, patting her pocket as if she'd got a treasure there. Hurry and get done. Don't stop to quirk your little finger and simper over your plate, Amy, cried Jo, choking in her tea and dropping her bread and butter side down on the carpet in her haste to get at the treat. Beth ate no more, but crept away to sit in her shadowy corner and brood over the delight to come, till the others were ready. I think it's so splendid in Father to go as a chaplain when he was too old to be drafted and not strong enough for a soldier, cried Meg warmly. Don't I wish I could go as a drummer, a vivan, what's its name, or a nurse so I could hear him, be near him and help him, exclaimed Jo with a groan. It must be very disgraceful to sleep in a tent and eat all sorts of bad-tasting things and drink out of a tin mug, sighed Amy. When will he come home, Marmee? Asked Beth, with a little quiver in her voice. Not for many months, dear, unless he's sick. He will stay and do his work faithfully as long as he can, and we won't ask for him to be back any minute sooner than he can be spared. Now come and hear the letter. They all drew to the fire, Mother in the big chair with Beth at her feet, Meg and Amy perched on either arm of the chair, and Jo leaning on the back, where no one could see any sign of emotion if the letter should happen to be touching. Very few letters were written in those hard times that were not touching, especially those which fathers sent home. Excuse me. In this one, little was said of the hardships endured, the dangers faced, or the homesickness conquered. It was a cheerful, hopeful letter full of lively descriptions of camp life, marches and military news, and only at the end did the writer's heart overflow with fatherly love and longing for the little girls at home. Give them all my dear love and a kiss. Tell them I think of them by day, pray for them by night, and find my best comfort in their affection at all times. A year seems a very long time to wait before I see them, but remind them that while we wait, we may all work, so that these hard days need not be wasted. I know they will remember all I said to them, that they will be loving children to you, will do their duty faithfully, fight their bosom enemies bravely, and conquer themselves so beautifully that when I come home, when I come back to them, I may be fonder and prouder than ever of my little women. Everybody sniffed when they came to that part. Jo wasn't ashamed of the great tear that dropped off the end of her nose, and Amy never minded the rumpling of her curls as she hid her face on her mother's shoulder and sobbed out, I am a selfish girl, but I'll truly try to be better, so he mayn't be disappointed in me by and by. We all will, cried Meg. I think too much of my looks, and I hate to work, but won't any more if I can help it. I'll try and be what he loves to call me, a little woman, and not be rough and wild, but do my duty here instead of wanting to be somewhere else, said Jo, thinking that keeping her temper at home was a much harder task than facing a rebel or two down south. Beth said nothing, but wiped away her tears with a blue army sock and began to knit with all her might, losing no time in doing the duty that lay nearest her. While she resolved in her quiet little soul to be all that Father hoped to find her when the year brought round the happy coming home. Mrs. March broke the silence that followed Jo's words by saying in her cheery voice, do you remember how you used to play Pilgrim's Progress when you were little things? Nothing delighted you more than to have me tie my piece bags on your backs for your burdens, give you hats and sticks and rolls of paper, and let you travel through the house from the cellar, which was the city of destruction, up to the housetop, where you had all the lovely things you could collect to make a celestial city. What fun it was, especially going by the lions fighting Apollyon and passing through the valley where the hoblins go, said Jo. I liked the place where the bundles fell off and tumbled downstairs, said Meg. My favorite part was when we came out on the flat roof where our flowers and arbors and pretty things were, and all stood up and sang for joy there in the sunshine, said Beth, smiling, if that pleasant moment had come back to her. I don't remember much about it, except that I was afraid of the cellar and the dark entry, and I always liked the cake and the milk we had at the top. If I wasn't too old for such things, I'd rather like to play it over again, said Amy, who began to talk of renouncing childish things at a mature age of 12. We are never too old for this, my dear, because it is a play we are playing all the time in one way or another. Our burden's here. Our road is here before us, and the longing for goodness and happiness is the guide that leads us through the many troubles and mistakes to the peace which is a true celestial city. Now, my little pilgrims, suppose you begin again, not in play, but in earnest, and see how far on you get before Father comes home. Really, Mother? Where are our bundles? Asked Amy, who was a very literal young lady. Each of you told what your burden was just now, except Beth. I rather think she hasn't got any. Yes, I have. Mine is dishes and dusters and envying girls with nice pianos and being afraid of people. Beth's bundle was such a funny one that everybody wanted to laugh, but nobody did, for it would have hurt her feelings very much. Let us do it, said Meg thoughtfully. It's only another name for trying to be good, and the story may help us. For though we do want to be good, it's hard work, and we forget and don't do our best. We were the slough of despond tonight, and Mother came and pulled us out and as help did in the book. We ought to have our roll of directions like Christian. What shall we do about that? Asked Joe, delighted with the fancy which lent a little romance to the very dull task of doing her duty. Look under your pillows Christmas morning, and you will find your guidebook, replied Mrs. March. They talked over the new plan while old Hannah cleared the table. Then came out the four little work baskets, and the needles flew as the girl made sheets for Aunt March. It was uninteresting sewing, but tonight no one grumbled. They adopted Joe's plan of dividing the long seams into 4 parts and calling the quarters Europe, Africa, Asia, and America, and in that way got on capitally, especially when they talked about the different countries as they stitched through them. At 9, they stopped work and sung as usual before they went to bed. No one but Beth could get music out of the old piano, but she had a way of softly touching the yellow keys and making a pleasant accompaniment to the simple songs they sang. And we'll leave that there. Merry Christmas! All right. Now, has everybody got their little ones gathered? Because here it is. Here it is. Are we all ready? Everybody ready? It's called A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore. "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, and hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter. I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted, and he called them by name. Are you ready? Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricanes fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursets they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his nose to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his sack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry, and his droll little mouth was drawn up. Oh, and his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His little droll mouth was drawn up like a bow, and his beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head, and soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, and then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger alongside his nose, giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Merry Christmas. This is where I sign off for the rest of the holiday. I will see you all on Boxing Day. Maybe I'll do a live stream tomorrow. All right? This is the Mrs. Wolfie saying Merry Christmas. I love you all. And remember, on this day, it is the day that we remember to be a little kinder, a little more patient, a little more tolerant with each other. Let's try and keep that going throughout the rest of the year and the year to come. We've had a crappy year or two, but it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Every one of us is singularly responsible for lighting up somebody else's life. I take that duty very seriously. This is the Mrs. Wolfie saying, it's not the glow you feel when snow appears. It's not the Christmas card, and I'm sorry my voice is rough, you've sent for years. I've been singing all day. Not the joyful sound when sleigh bells ring, or the merry songs children sing. The little gift you send on Christmas Day will not bring back the friend you turned away. So may I suggest the secret of Christmas is not the things you do at Christmas time, but the Christmas things you do all year through. Merry Christmas. I love you all. Love is the one thing that can cure and heal everything that's going on in this world. Please meditate on that, love. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And Merry happy ho ho.